Happy Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. birthday holiday to you. I'm Karen Nelson, Rogers' first Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Director for Rogers Behavioral Health. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our first ever Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. birthday holiday celebration. It may be the first, but it won't be the last. How fitting that on this remarkable day that we are coming together in our common humanity to celebrate this great man on his federal holiday. Also, what a great way to live out the values of Dr. King's birthday holiday beyond just his birthday today, with the announcement of the creation of the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Department. I report to Sue McKenzie-Dix, Vice President of InHealth, and I'm coming to you with 20 plus years of experience in the DEI space. Over the course of my career, I have worked in the corporate setting, outside consulting, and back again. Most notably, I was the first African-American woman corporate diversity manager for General Electric Medical Systems, now Healthcare, in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Then I created my own diversity consulting firm, Nelstar Enterprises, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Following that, I moved to Georgia, in Dalton, Georgia, where I worked as the first corporate diversity manager for Shaw Industries, a Berkshire Hathaway company, as their first corporate diversity manager. Then back to Milwaukee in 2015, where I embarked upon my business school degree with the UWM-Lubar School of Business and obtained a 2017 Executive Master in Business Administration. My undergraduate degree is that of a bachelor's in chemistry from Bennett College, the first historically Black women's college in America. Most recently, I then moved to Appleton, Wisconsin, where I'm joining you today, where I served as the 7th Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator for the Mayor's Office. Joining me in Rogers' brand new Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Department is Jessica Lango, Rogers' first Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Coordinator, coming to us from the city of Milwaukee. Also of note, we are announcing today we have 2 new employee resource groups. Won't you join them? BIPOC and LGBTQIA+. As the program progresses, you will learn more about those acronyms and what they all mean. Today's event is being brought to you by the BIPOC ERG. If you'd like to learn more about how to join our efforts for equity at Rogers and to work with us toward that goal, please contact me via email at karen.nelson@rogersbh.org. For now, please enjoy the program.
Sagoli Swagwake, Lochliwadok Ni Young Yets. Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Paulus. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Today, I will be providing a land acknowledgement. A land acknowledgement is an opportunity to recognize that the land upon which we reside has a history that stretches back long before colonizers arrived upon the shores of Turtle Island. The rich and dynamic history of Indigenous peoples has for too long been ignored, as well as a history of genocide, land theft, and ethnic cleansing exacted in the name of manifest destiny. May this land acknowledgement help to serve as a starting point to embrace and develop a truer history of this land. So it's my understanding that we have people joining us from all over, but this particular land acknowledgement is for Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. Various indigenous peoples have inhabited the area of Oconomowoc, with the most recent being the Ho-Chunk, the Menominee Nation, and the Potawatomi Nation. The name Oconomowoc is based in the Potawatomi language. Mike Zimmerman, a Potawatomi, Ojibwe, and Odawa language teacher at the Indian Community School in Franklin, Wisconsin, has stated that the word most likely references the building of dams in the area by beavers. The Ho-Chunk Nation, the Menominee Nation, and the Potawatomi Nation continue to call the area of Wisconsin home. Their vibrant communities contribute to all aspects of Wisconsin life, with an emphasis on preserving our beautiful landscapes for future generations while improving standards of living within their communities. More can be learned by visiting Native American tourism of Wisconsin. Yawunko, thank you.
Let
We dedicate this video to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on the occasion of what would have been his 92nd birthday. Him, along with many courageous men and women of all backgrounds, arduous struggles, changed the course of history. He didn't just fight for himself or one group. He fought for equality for all. Today, we are here because of him. I present to you the 3 leaders of Rogers' new BIPOC ERG. That is, Rogers' new Black and Indigenous people of color employee resource group leaders. As they recite Dr. King's famous I Have a Dream speech, note the progress we have made with gender and race references since 1963. Even with those small gains, the sentiments engendered in this powerful speech ring true today.
I am happy to join with you
today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 80 years ago, a great American, in whose symbolic shadow we stand today, signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corner of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so, we come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we came to this nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, Black men, as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check. A check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in this great vault of opportunity in this nation. And so we come to cash this check, a check that will give us, upon demand, the riches of freedom and the security of justice. We have also come to this hollow spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. And those who hope that the Negro needed to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. And there will be neither rest until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundation of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. But there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads to the palace of justice. In this process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence again and again. We must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force.
The marvelous new
militancy, which has engulfed the Negro community, must not lead us to distrust of all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny. And they have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. We could not be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. No, we are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I am not unmindful that some of you have come here out of great trials and tribulations. Some of you have come fresh from narrow jail cells, and some of you have come from areas where your quest for freedom left you battered by storms of persecution and staggered by the winds of police brutality. You have been the veterans of creative suffering. Continue to work with the faith that unearned suffering is redemptive. Go back to Mississippi. Go back to Alabama. Go back to South Carolina. Go back to Georgia. Go back to Louisiana. Go back to the slums and ghettos of our northern cities, knowing that somehow this situation can and will be changed. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, and so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise and live up to its true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lip dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little Black boys and Black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope, and this is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. And this will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from the Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, and from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, Black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual.
Free at last.
Free at last.
Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
We are free at last.
Hello, my name is Angela Orvis. Today, there are people who continue to march. I join my voice as advisor to our 3 leaders of Rogers' new BIPOC ERG, working in departments and communities system-wide. Together with Karen Nelson, our first director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, we are dedicated to issues of equity, fairness, and access, working with people of different races, cultures, ethnicities, religion, sexual orientation, people with disabilities, and veterans to make Rogers an even better place. We know the power of equity, diversity, and inclusion. It is our shared mission. We're not always seen and heard, but we are always there making a difference. This video highlights our collective voice.
Hello, greetings, family. My name is Ajmal Butler, founder of Heal the Hood Milwaukee and executive director at A. Butler LLC, based here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I want to take a moment before I get into my commentary just to shout out behavioral health services for the work and the commitment that they do in this state to cater to us all, be it mental health needs, so on and so forth. I'm definitely appreciative of this opportunity. I think as we talk about MLK, and I want to dive right in, family, because I don't have too long, but I do want to talk real strong. As we talk about MLK, and as we look at the climax, the social justice climax of the country we are in and the world around us, I think it's imperative that we understand a couple of key things about the character and the man, Dr. King, because we all are familiar with his more notable speeches and his more notable appearances. And there's a lot of different picture and photograph opportunities, very famous images of Dr. King in his element doing what he does best. But I want to, for one, talk about the fearlessness and the ambition of Dr. MLK Jr. Fearlessness and ambition are qualities that a lot of people lack. I mean, let's just be realistic about it here. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did things in his time that we couldn't fathom doing in our time today in 2021, okay? The way he fought oppression physically. We're talking about water hoses, dogs, imprisonment. At any point in time, he could have gave up. At any point in time when his life was threatened, he could have stopped. At any point in time when the lives of his loved ones, his family, his good friends were threatened, because he was on the path to nonviolence and the path to freedom and racial equality and justice in this country, he could have let go at any point in time, but he chose to keep fighting. There's something to be said about the fire inside of a man like Dr. King to continue to fight, even when it seems that all of the odds are against you. I want us to take a moment and reflect. How many of us have dealt with situations in this world that have been significantly less detrimental than water hose, dogs, threats on your life, threats to your family life, imprisonment, so on and so forth? We've dealt with obstacles significantly less than, and we've given up. Myself included. I'm saying we, myself included, right? We have to deal with less than what he may have to deal with, but we may not have that fire as big as the Honorable Dr. King had inside of him. And so I want us to take a note of the fearlessness, the ability to wake up every morning and fight your demons spiritually, fight your demons practically and physically, fight all of the ills that are designed to stop you. I want us to see that fearlessness in him, the ambition, the desire, and the drive to wake up every morning in the shoes of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and say, hey, man, today is the day. Yesterday was rough for us. You know, we may have had whatever altercation with opposition that we had. You know, we may have had whatever, racial intolerance. We may have had whatever laws that prohibited us from operating in our greatness. But today is the day. That's ambition. That is ambition. I want us to look at how young Dr. King was. The youth have the power. Who is our Dr. King of today? What young man or woman is ready to take the mantle of freedom, equality, justice, truth, love, and peace and take that to another level as Dr. King did? Dr. King was a phenomenal young man. Yeah, I'm 29, younger than I am. Dr. King was a household name because of his passion, his fearlessness, and his ambition. His youthfulness led him forward. His vigor in his body, his vitality in him led him forward. And so I just want to say that, yes, to acknowledge the youth. We have a lot of youth leadership, specifically here in Milwaukee, where I'm based, but in Wisconsin, we have a lot of youth leadership that is fighting to change legislation, fighting for equity amongst race, equity amongst gender, equity amongst class. And I want to salute those young leaders. So to any young man or woman who may be watching right now and you're saying to yourself, is this fight worth it? Can I make the change that I intend to make? It is absolutely worth it. You can absolutely make that change. Start within your personal affairs, then you move to your communal affairs, and then it's like a ripple effect. You let that thing take off from there. The rock you throw into a pond may only be yay big, but the ripples get bigger and bigger and bigger. So to any young leadership that may be tuning into this video live or may happen to see the live stream later on in the day, or you may even catch this video next week, I want you to let this seed hit you and let your struggles grow you. Let your understanding and your wisdom water, nurture that seed inside of you that you can definitely be an agent of change. Yes? I want us to also look at Martin Luther King Jr.'s ability to smile in the face of the fire. Oh my God, that was good. I don't know if they heard me with that. So I'm gonna just bring that back one more time. His ability to be able to smile in the face of the fire. Again, all of these elements that we are studying and talking about today on MLK Day, they're all interconnected and related. His fire, his passion, his smile, his resilience, his ambition, his fearlessness, all of those elements are interconnected. But the person who can smile in the face of the fire, they know that they have the victory. I'm into UFC and martial arts and boxing and combat sports and things of the nature like this. And some of the best fights that I have seen thus far, and I've been into the sports for a long time, participating and watching, some of the best fights that I have ever seen are the ones where you get that opponent, man, who is just taking a beating. I mean, he's getting hit with a left hook, then a right hook, then an uppercut, then a jab, then another jab, then a stiff hook, and so on and so forth. And realistically speaking, it's looking like this fighter would just can't win this fight. But there's something in that fighter, man, that keeps on rolling. They might catch a lucky punch. You know, their opponent might stumble, and then the fighter is able to take a hold of that opportunity and catch that win, catch that submission, catch that victory. But those are some of the best fights, because everybody in that arena, you might be watching a fight. You might be watching a fight with 10,000 people in the arena. And everybody in that stadium, minus a couple of few that may be in this person's corner, may count that person out and say, oh, he's too beaten up right now, or she's too bloody and she's too bruised up and she's breathing too hard and she's too slow at the moment. She's just taking a beating. There's no way on earth Mr. Butler can win. But I'm here to tell you, if we are to live our lives as any sort of reflection of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., then Mr. Butler knows that I'm going to continue to fight until I can no longer fight. And we're not just talking about a physical fight. We're talking about being able to conquer those demons, those daily demons that rob us of sleep. We're talking about fighting for freedom, emotional freedom. We're talking about fighting for financial freedom, social freedom, so on and so forth. Dr. King was a man of multi-talents. I don't want us to get caught in the fact of the I have a dream speech, or, you know, some of his more notable lectures. I want us to watch the day-to-day operation of the man that is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I want us to look at how he lived his life on purpose. He did not by accident fall into the movement. He did not by accident create the civil rights movement and be a pioneer for the civil rights movement of the 60s, and that flowed into the 70s and then into the 80s, and then we lived the life of what we see today of those of us who are still on the front lines fighting for that equality. King says something in one of his speeches. He said, I have seen the promised land, and though I may not get there with you, it will be obtained. I have seen the promised land, and I know that it is an actual factual thing.
So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
That is so powerful to me, because, see, a lot of us, when we fight this fight of social justice, when we fight this fight of freedom, justice, equality, truth, peace, and love, it may not be the end result that we'll see in our lifetime. We may not be able to see the changed legislation that we're looking for. We may not be able to see statistic reverse. For me, I fight for the advocacy of youth of color. I may not see the statistics of youth of color reverse dramatically over my time. But I know that, like a small rock, if I can toss myself into the pond, and if as that small rock, I can make sure that I am filled with energy, positivity, love, information, resources, therapeutic things for the mental health, social emotional growth, revolution, empowerment, ambition, fearlessness, so on and so forth. I know then that as that small rock, I'm going to make a ripple effect that may be miles away from me. I may not have a clue what that end result of that ripple effect looks like, but that's not my job to see the end result. My job is to continue to fight. Yes, my job is to continue to wake up every day. If I say that I am a person who wants to lead a movement, who wants to see change in this world, who wants to see growth in this world and healing in this world, I know that my job is to wake up every day and intentionally operate in my greatness, because that's what Dr. King did. When everything was against that man, when all odds were against him, when his very life, I can't stress that enough, family, because some of us will get a paperclip on the tip of our finger and quit the movement, let alone our lives being at stake. Yes, So I wanted to just take a moment and I want us to really, truly celebrate Dr. King, and not just in today's fashion, okay? Not just celebrating because of the holiday and we got off and the kids are out of school. I want us to see how we can implement those teachings of love, equality, nonviolence, peace, demonstration, ambition, fearlessness, so on and so forth. I want us to figure out how we can implement that in our day-to-day lives. Yes? I want to end us with a spoken word poem. It is one of my absolute favorite pieces that I have ever created and performed and ministered and did. It is, I just love this piece so much. It is called Preach Black Men. I think that it may be fitting for the occasion. So I hope you all enjoy. And again, make sure that you guys follow the behavioral health services. Make sure you're staying in tune with the various resources and opportunities and things they have going on in the community. Make sure you're checking their social media accounts just for various updates and for things that you may not even need those particular services that the behavioral health services offer, but maybe you can extend that resource to somebody you know that may be in need. But nonetheless, again, thank you for this opportunity, and here we go. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall put all my faith in God and fight to the last breath in my chest. See, life can be hard, lots of drama and stress, but keep your head up and always give your best. See, life is about passing spiritual tests. May God bless the child that has its own. May he show favor over children growing up in broken homes. Sometimes I wonder what hurts more, a broken heart or a broken bone. To all my soldiers in the struggle, you are not alone. I'm about to speak life in this poem. See, God didn't build us to be financially broke. We were built for dominion, abundance, and authority. The good book says so. We have to be at peace and learn how to let go. Let go of doubt and don't be fearful. Hold hope close to your heart, because I do believe in miracles. The doctor said your condition has taken a turn for the worse, but I'm claiming God will heal you. Drink from the living waters, let them fulfill you. Your past does not disqualify you from a future that is fruitful. You may have been hungry, broke, molested, and cold, but none of that killed you. So since you are still here, it's another day to rebuild you. Shake off the dust and reveal the real you. See, God will renew you. Look back on all that you've been through and ponder how the devil tried to dominate your mentals, but you are still here. See, when the Bible says, be still and know that I am God, it means rejoice in the fact that you are simply still standing, though times are hard. And some people may say, what is God? God is the feeling of your beating heart. God is what you have when you have nothing left. God will give you the willpower to conquer your flesh. What is God? God is hope during dark affliction. God is the willpower of a man who is 10 years sober from his dope addiction. God can be seen in the eyes and the smiles of the children. God is a feeling of healing, and I won't be anywhere if God's presence isn't in the building. God is the transformation from the caterpillar to the butterfly. God's word is all I need to get my mind right. And when I cry on the inside, I use God's mercy as a tissue to wipe those tears I shed on the inside. See, God isn't ego and pride. God isn't conquer and divide. When you were in the hospital, it wasn't the medicine and drugs, but God that kept you alive. God is deeper than religion. God is the feeling of being free, even if locked in a prison. God guides my divine mission. God is everything from the atom to the planet. God is knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. God will make tables for you to feast on in front of your enemies, and you're wrong if you think God won't reveal your enemies. God is what rescued me from suicidal tendencies. God is purity. God has insurance. See, God has a recovery plan called AAA, just in case his kids who have faith get caught in a tough place. AAA stands for my atrocities, advance my anointing, because anything you go through is surely designed to grow you. God is trying to show you to remain hopeful and know that we're going to pull through. In my hoods, they do drive-bys, and unfortunately, they pull up and shoot. Now, instead of one life lost, we have lost two. The one who the bullet went through and the one who decided to shoot. But I have proof that if we all came together, we could save our youth. And if we all came together, we could save our neighborhoods. I'm a praying man. I'd pray all day if I could. See, prayer is my peace. Prayer is my protection. Prayer is my passion. Poetry is my prayer. Poetry is my prayer. And I hope that in this poem, somebody hears the sounds of chains breaking in the air. There's a shifting and a shaking in the air. The last shall be first, and that time is almost here. Preach, black man. Thank you. Again, family, how can we implement the life and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in our everyday lives, not just for an annual celebration, not just for a TV documentary, not just for a stamp that you can put on your envelopes, but how can we fight to make this world a better place? Thank you again, and my name is Acknowledgement Butler, founder of Heal the Hood Milwaukee, executive director at 8 Butler LLC, based right here in the great city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Stay connected, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Sagoli Swagwake, Lohli Wadok Ni Yungyats. Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Paulus. I'm the director of Southeastern Oneida Tribal Services here in Milwaukee. We are a tribal organization, a department of the Oneida Nation, serving tribal members, Native Americans, and other communities in the Milwaukee area since 1992. The focus of our office is on cultural education and also on improving the wellness of our community here in the Milwaukee area. Milwaukee is home to more than 7,000 Native Americans, including roughly 2,000 Oneida Nation members. Wisconsin is home to 12 tribal nations and approximately 55,000 Indigenous people. Nationally, there are 574 diverse tribal nations, totaling approximately 5.2 million people. Indigenous people have a long and trauma-filled relationship with European colonizers and the federal government, an experience that is generally not taught about in mainstream society. Dr. King once said, "Our nation was born in genocide when it embraced the doctrine that the original American, the Indian, was an inferior race." Dr. King was an advocate for civil rights for all people, and the civil rights movement resonated in Indigenous communities, giving birth to groups such as the American Indian Movement, who fought for the rights of Indigenous peoples. Happy Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. 2020 seemed like such a nice number, like perfect eyesight. But what it brought was an extremely tough year for our communities. Despite all the heartbreak and challenges, there's much to be thankful for from 2020. Murder of George Floyd in May and subsequent rise in Black Lives Matter protests resulted in the awakening of the world. The demand for an end to police brutality and call for systemic changes united people from all backgrounds, including our Indigenous communities. Like ripples in a pool of water, the energy of the Black Lives Movement expanded outward, demanding social justice in not only law enforcement, but touching numerous issues. Included here are a few examples from Indigenous communities in the United States. Now, with each of these examples, I have some follow-up action items, some things for people to take note of, think about, and maybe we'll organize more collective activism around these issues in 2021. First off, Jonathan Tubby. Say his name. Jonathan was an Oneida Nation member who was arrested by the Green Bay Police Department in October of 2018. According to the CDC, Native Americans are killed in police encounters at a higher rate than any other racial group in the United States. Circumstances led to Jonathan being handcuffed, pepper sprayed, and attacked by a police dog. Finally, an officer opened fire on Jonathan, killing him. This all happened in the Sally Port of the Green Bay Police Station, and the family contends Jonathan was face down when he was shot 5 times. No charges were levied on the officer, and he has since received a promotion. The family of Jonathan Tubby has continued to fight for justice, and in December 2020, the Green Bay Common Council unanimously voted to require police body cams and de-escalation training for the Green Bay Police Department. This action included significant funding by the Green Bay Packers. Now, the action item. Incorporate into the fabric of our communities culturally appropriate and accessible methods to heal the impacts of current and historical traumas. Next, missing and murdered Indigenous Women's Task Force. Our Indigenous women are murdered at a rate 10 times higher than other ethnicities, and it's the 3rd leading cause of death for our women. In December 2020, the state of Wisconsin held their first meeting of the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Task Force, a major accomplishment, and they're charged with helping to fight the abduction, homicide, violence, and trafficking of Indigenous women in Wisconsin. This effort is in partnership with the Wisconsin Department of Justice. The goal of the task force is to research the underlying issues contributing to the crimes being committed against our women and implement systemic changes to address the problems. Now, the action item. Normalize programs and services targeting men and boys that seek to address the root causes of violence against our women. Next, Indian mascots. In 2005, the American Psychological Association called for schools and teams to stop using American Indian mascots, symbols, images, and personalities because they harm Native young people's self-esteem and social identity development and undermine the learning environment for everyone, especially people who don't have much exposure to Native people. Since the civil rights movement of the 60s, various groups throughout the United States have protested and called for an end to Indian mascots. Much progress has been made in the state of Wisconsin and throughout the United States, with high schools and colleges dropping their Native mascots. And finally, in 2020, the professional baseball team in Cleveland announced they will be dropping the Indians mascot, and the professional football team in Washington announced they will be dropping their mascot. Action item. Install systemic changes in education that result in providing representational curriculums that result in an understanding of diverse perspectives, contributions, and histories. For many of these schools, in the absence of actual Native American history and education on Native American cultures in their curriculum, the stereotypical mascots have become the education for those communities. These changes in our society and steps towards social justice were fueled by the energy and global awakening prompted by the Black Lives Matter movement. The blueprint of nonviolent collective action established by Dr. King continues to inspire and guide our steps into 2021 and beyond. Yawanko, thank you.